Welcome, celestial members Aut Neterakin 162 and Nezon. Track. Your presence brightens our cosmic circle. Through wisdom, unity, and higher frequency, we journey together. Thank you for aligning with truth, service, and love on Arcturian Council message. May our shared path awaken stars within and beyond eternally. Everything you thought you knew about your life path is about to be disrupted. This message is not here to comfort you, it is here to wake you up. According to the Arcturian Council, the moment your eyes landed on these words, a dormant sequence within your energetic field began activating. This is described as an involuntary recall signal, meaning your soul responded before your mind could question it. Many will scroll past this without feeling anything. You did not. That alone is unsettling, because it suggests your consciousness has reached a threshold that cannot be reversed. The Council warns that ignoring this activation may cause emotional turbulence, sudden fatigue, vivid dreams, or an unexplainable urge to change your life direction. This is not punishment, it is pressure caused by expansion. You are not losing control, you are shedding limits that once kept you safe. The shock comes from this truth. The upgrade has already begun, and resistance will only intensify the sensations. Your nervous system, thoughts, and even relationships may feel unstable as outdated frequencies collapse. This is the first sign that your reality is being rewritten from the inside out. To claim this activation, type, "I am ready." The Arcturian Council explains that upgrades do not arrive as light beams or dramatic visions for most humans. Instead, they come disguised as discomfort, confusion, and moments of deep questioning. You may suddenly feel disconnected from people, routines, or goals that once defined you. This is not depression or failure, it is detachment. Your energetic body is recalibrating to hold more information, more awareness, and more responsibility over your own reality. During this phase, time may feel distorted. Days blur together, sleep cycles shift, and your thoughts become louder when you try to be still. The Council states this happens because your mind is being trained to operate beyond linear patterns. Old belief systems begin to fracture, and with them, the false identities you wore to survive. This can feel lonely, even frightening, because the familiar no longer feels safe, yet the new has not fully formed. But this is the corridor between frequencies. Walking away now would mean returning to a version of yourself that can no longer fully exist. To anchor this shift, type, "I accept the change." At this stage, the Arcturians say many humans experience heightened sensitivity. Sounds feel louder, emotions feel heavier, and other people's energy becomes impossible to ignore. This is because your perceptual filters are thinning. You are no longer meant to numb yourself to the environment, you are meant to read it. The upgrade sharpens intuition, but before it feels empowering, it feels overwhelming. You may absorb moods that are not yours or feel drained after social interactions. This is not weakness, it is untrained awareness. The Council emphasizes the importance of boundaries now, not as walls, but as conscious choices. What you consume mentally, emotionally, and energetically will directly shape how smooth or chaotic this upgrade becomes. This phase asks you to stop proving, pleasing, and performing. You are being prepared to operate from alignment rather than reaction. That preparation can feel brutal because it strips away habits that once protected you. To stabilize your energy, type, "I choose alignment." The Arcturian Council also warns that during this upgrade, truth will surface rapidly. Hidden emotions, unresolved memories, and long-ignored desires may rise without warning. You might question past decisions or suddenly see patterns you once defended. This can trigger guilt or regret, but the Council insists this is not to shame you, it is to free you. Awareness dissolves repetition. Once you see clearly, you cannot unknow. This is why the upgrade feels intense. It accelerates realization. You are no longer allowed the comfort of unconscious cycles. Some relationships may strain or dissolve as your frequency shifts beyond old agreements. This is not abandonment, it is resonance correction. Anything that cannot rise with you will naturally fall away. Grieving this loss is part of integration, not a sign you are failing. The Council urges compassion for yourself as you release identities built for survival rather than truth. To release the past, type, I let go. Here is the part most people are not prepared to hear. The Arcturian Council states that not everyone completes this upgrade. Some will feel the discomfort and choose distraction, denial, or regression. If you are still reading, it suggests you are enduring the pressure rather than escaping it. This is rare. The rehook is this: your consciousness is being trained to influence reality, not just react to it. This upgrade is not about peace, it is about power with responsibility. You may feel isolated because fewer people can meet you at this level of awareness. That isolation is temporary, but necessary. You are learning discernment, not superiority. The Council emphasizes that the next phase will test your integrity. How you speak, what you tolerate, and where you place your attention will determine how this power expresses itself. To step into responsibility, type, I stand in truth. As the upgrade deepens, the Arcturians describe a restructuring of your inner dialogue. Thoughts that once ran automatically may now feel intrusive or out of place. This is because you are becoming aware of the observer behind the mind. The gap between stimulus and response widens, giving you choice where there was once compulsion. This can feel unsettling, as if parts of your personality are dissolving. In truth, they are being reorganized. You may notice less tolerance for dishonesty, including self-deception. This honesty can feel harsh at first, but it ultimately brings relief. The Council encourages you to listen more than react during this phase. Silence becomes informative, stillness becomes instructive. You are learning to access guidance without external validation. To strengthen awareness, type, I am listening. Physical sensations may also accompany this upgrade. The Arcturians mention pressure around the head, chest, or spine, sudden waves of heat or cold, and fluctuations in energy levels. These are described as calibration symptoms, not illness. Your body, suggesting to conduct higher informational flow. Rest becomes essential, not optional. Ignoring bodily signals may intensify discomfort. Hydration, grounding, and conscious breathing help stabilize the nervous system during these periods. The Council stresses that honoring the body is honoring the upgrade. This process is not meant to disconnect you from your humanity, but to refine how you inhabit it. The body becomes a bridge, not a burden. To support your body, type, I honor my vessel. Emotionally, you may oscillate between clarity and confusion. Moments of deep insight may be followed by doubt or exhaustion. The Arcturians say this is integration in motion. Each realization requires time to anchor into your nervous system and daily life. Patience is critical here. Forcing understanding will only create resistance. The Council advises allowing emotions to move without attaching narratives to them. Feelings are data, not commands. As you stop identifying with every emotional wave, stability emerges naturally. This emotional neutrality does not dull joy. It deepens it by removing fear-based attachments. To allow integration, type, I trust the process. During this phase, synchronicities may increase. Repeating numbers, unexpected messages, and timely encounters are signs that your awareness is aligning with broader patterns. The Arcturian Council clarifies that these are not signs to follow blindly, but confirmations that you are observing reality more accurately. Meaning is no longer imposed, it is recognized. This shift empowers discernment over dependency. You are not being guided like a child. You are being trained as a conscious participant. The more present you become, the more responsive reality feels. This feedback loop strengthens confidence in your inner navigation system. To acknowledge alignment, type, I see clearly. The final note from the Arcturian Council in this segment is this: the upgrade is not about becoming someone else, it is about removing what you were never meant to be. The exhaustion, the questioning, the emotional purging are signs of subtraction, not loss. What remains is clarity, presence, and self-trust. The next stages will require courage, not force. You are being prepared to live deliberately rather than habitually. This is not an ending, it is a restructuring of how you experience existence itself. And once stabilized, there is no desire to return to unconscious living. To seal this phase, type, "I am aligned." As the Arcturian Council continues, they reveal that once the initial turbulence settles, a deeper layer of the upgrade begins, one that many mistake for stagnation. You may feel paused, suspended between who you were and who you are becoming. This is not delay, it is compression. The Council explains that during this phase, your consciousness is being condensed so it can move with precision rather than force. Old motivations weaken. You may lose interest in chasing validation, proving worth, or engaging in drama that once felt unavoidable. This can feel unsettling because ambition reshapes itself. Instead of striving outward, energy turns inward. Refining intention, silence becomes louder than no's. You may feel called to withdraw, not out of fear, but out of instinctual recalibration. This is where discernment is sharpened. Every choice begins to feel consequential, because it is. The Council stresses that what you tolerate now programs your next reality. This realization alone can feel heavy, but it is also liberating. You are no longer drifting, you are steering. To claim conscious direction, type, "I choose with clarity." The Arcturians emphasize that during this stage, your relationship with fear will change dramatically. Fear does not disappear, it loses authority. You may still feel hesitation, but it no longer paralyzes you. Instead, it becomes informational, highlighting where old conditioning still lingers. This can feel confronting because excuses lose their power. The narratives you once used to justify staying small begin to collapse under awareness. The Council says, this is when many experience a surge of responsibility, not obligation to others, but accountability to self. You may feel a quiet pressure to live more honestly, even if it disrupts comfort. This pressure is not external, it is coherence demanding expression. When thoughts, emotions, and actions align, resistance fades. But before alignment stabilizes, internal conflict can intensify. This is the mind renegotiating its role. To transform fear into awareness, type, "I stand steady." At this point, the upgrade begins affecting how you perceive time and outcomes. The Arcturian Council notes that impatience often surfaces here. You may want results, confirmation, or visible change. But this phase is about causation, not outcome. You are being trained to focus on the quality of intention rather than immediate reward. When intention stabilizes, outcomes reorganize automatically. This can feel frustrating because it removes the illusion of control while granting actual influence. The Council states that manifestation becomes less emotional and more precise. Desperation weakens signals, neutrality strengthens them. This shift challenges everything you were taught about effort and reward. You begin to realize that force creates distortion, while clarity creates momentum. To align intention, type, "I move with precision." Social dynamics also undergo recalibration now. You may notice fewer people resonate with your thoughts or humor. Conversations feel repetitive or shallow. This is not judgment, it is frequency mismatch. The Arcturians clarify that loneliness can surface here, but it is not emptiness, it is space. Space for new connections that mirror your expanded awareness. For a time, that space may feel uncomfortable. Humans are conditioned to fill silence with distraction. But the Council urges you to let the space exist. It is a signal that your field is clearing. When alignment deepens, connection returns often unexpectedly and with greater depth. To trust the clearing, type, "I allow space." Here is a truth the Arcturian Council rarely shares directly. Once awareness stabilizes at this level, ignorance is no longer available as refuge. You cannot unknow what you now sense. This can feel like a burden before it feels like freedom. You may see manipulation more clearly, including your own past self-manipulation. This clarity can feel isolating, even heavy. But the Council states this is the threshold of sovereignty. When illusion falls away, choice becomes unavoidable. This is where many hesitate, not because they are incapable, but because responsibility replaces comfort. Yet this is also where genuine peace becomes possible. To accept sovereignty. Type, I choose awareness. The upgrade now begins to influence how you respond to conflict. The Arcturians explain that reactivity diminishes, not because you care less, but because you see more. You may pause before responding, sensing multiple outcomes simultaneously. This expanded perception allows you to disengage without suppression. Boundaries form naturally rather than defensively. You no longer need to explain yourself excessively. This can confuse others, but it stabilizes you. The Council highlights that restraint is not weakness, it is mastery. Energy conserved becomes energy available for creation rather than repair. To embody mastery. Type, I respond consciously. Creativity may surge unexpectedly during this phase. Ideas, insights, and impulses arise without strain. The Arcturian Council says, this is because mental noise has decreased, allowing intuitive intelligence to surface. You may feel drawn to create, express, or build without knowing why. Purpose becomes experiential rather than conceptual. You stop asking, what should I do? And start noticing what flows. This flow state is not constant yet, but it is accessible. The more you trust it, the more consistent it becomes. To trust creative flow. Type, I allow expression. The Council also notes changes in how you experience emotion. Emotional highs and lows even out, replaced by depth rather than intensity. Joy becomes quieter, but more stable. Sadness moves through without lingering. This emotional regulation is not numbness, it is coherence. You are no longer riding emotional waves, you are observing currents. This stability allows compassion without overwhelm and empathy without absorption. It marks a shift from survival-based emotion to awareness-based feeling. To stabilize emotions. Typed, I remain center. As integration continues, trust in your internal signal strengthens. You may rely less on external opinions, guidance, or validation. The Arcturian Council emphasizes that this does not mean isolation, it means discernment. You choose input consciously rather than consuming compulsively. Information overload loses appeal. Simplicity becomes attractive. This refinement sharpens intuition and reduces confusion. Decision-making becomes cleaner, faster, and calmer. To strengthen intuition. Type, I trust myself. The Council concludes this segment with a reminder. This upgrade is not linear. You may revisit earlier sensations briefly, but with less intensity. Each cycle reinforces stability. What once felt overwhelming now feels navigable. You are not becoming something unnatural, you are returning to an optimized state of awareness. The process continues, but resistance decreases as trust increases. From here, expansion becomes collaborative rather than confrontational. To anchor this phase, type, I am stabilized. As the Arcturian Council moves you deeper into this phase, they emphasize that what is happening now is a restructuring of identity itself. Not the surface identity you show the world, but the internal reference point you use to decide who you are in every moment. You may notice that labels you once relied on, roles, titles, even personality traits no longer feel solid. This can be deeply unsettling because the mind craves definition. But the Council explains that definition is a limitation when consciousness expands. You are being shifted from identity-based living to state-based living. Instead of asking who am I, you begin to sense what state am I operating from right now. This subtle shift changes everything. You become less attached to being consistent and more committed to being coherent. Some days you may feel powerful and clear. Other days quiet and withdrawn. Both are correct. The upgrade dissolves the need to perform a fixed self. This can trigger fear because society rewards predictability, but internally, flexibility is strength. The Council says this is how multidimensional awareness integrates into a human nervous system by loosening rigid self-concepts, so higher intelligence can flow without distortion. To release rigid identity, type, I am fluid. At this stage, the Arcturians warn that subconscious patterns may surface more vividly, often through dreams or sudden emotional flashes. These are not regressions, they are retrievals. Parts of your psyche that were suppressed to maintain functionality are now being reintegrated. You may dream of past versions of yourself, unresolved conversations, or symbolic scenarios that feel emotionally charged. The Council advises against interpreting these literally. Instead, observe the emotional tone. What is being reclaimed is not the story, but the energy locked within it. This process can feel heavy because it temporarily increases emotional density. But once integrated, that energy becomes available for presence, creativity, and clarity. Many people mistake this phase for going backward because old material resurfaces. In truth, you are closing loops that once drained you unconsciously. Completion requires awareness. The more you resist these surfacing fragments, the longer they linger. Allowance accelerates integration. To allow reintegration, type, I'd welcome wholeness. The Council now addresses an uncomfortable but crucial aspect of the upgrade, the collapse of false urgency. You may suddenly lose motivation for things that once felt critical. Deadlines, pressures, and external demands may feel oddly irrelevant. This can cause anxiety, especially if your self-worth was tied to productivity. But the Arcturians explain that false urgency is a control mechanism rooted in fear-based time perception. As your awareness expands, you begin operating from a different temporal relationship. You act when alignment is present, not when pressure is applied. This does not make you passive, it makes you precise. Actions taken from alignment require less effort and produce cleaner outcomes. However, before trust stabilizes, you may feel unsure when or how to act. This is a recalibration of impulse. The nervous system is learning to differentiate between intuition and conditioning. Patience here prevents burnout later. To trust aligned timing, type, I act in alignment. As perception sharpens, the Arcturian Council notes that your tolerance for distortion decreases. This includes dishonesty, manipulation, and even subtle self-betrayal. Situations you once endured quietly may now provoke an internal alarm. This does not mean you must confront everything aggressively. Often, the upgrade expresses itself through withdrawal rather than reaction. You simply stop feeding what drains you. This can appear sudden to others, but internally it feels inevitable. The Council emphasizes that clarity does not always announce itself, it removes itself. You may walk away from dynamics without dramatic explanation because your energy no longer negotiates its own integrity. This is not coldness, it is conservation. Energy preserved becomes fuel for creation rather than repair. To honor integrity, type, I preserve my energy. Here is the revelation that unsettles most people at this level. The Arcturian Council states that your reality has already begun responding to your internal coherence, even if you have not consciously noticed. Subtle shifts, missed opportunities, delayed plans, unexpected endings were not obstacles, but reroutes. What shocks the mind is realizing that some losses were necessary corrections. Paths you thought you wanted would have constrained who you are becoming. This awareness can trigger grief for imagined futures. But the Council is clear. Coherence always overrides preference. What aligns with your expanded state will remain. What does not must dissolve. This is not punishment, it is precision. Once you see this, victim narratives lose their grip. You begin to sense the intelligence behind disruption. To accept intelligent change, type, I trust redirection. The upgrade now begins influencing how you relate to power. Not external authority, but internal agency. The Arcturians say many humans confuse power with control. As awareness expands, the desire to control outcomes weakens, replaced by the ability to influence states. You learn that calm presence can shift situations more effectively than force. This realization often arrives through contrast moments where you do less and receive more. The nervous system relaxes as it realizes no longer needs to anticipate every threat. This relaxation is not complacency, it is confidence without tension. Power becomes quiet, almost invisible. Others may sense it without being able to name it. To embody quiet power, type, I am grounded. The Council highlights that communication also changes at this stage. You may speak less, but with greater impact. Words become intentional rather than reactive. You may notice pauses before speaking, not from hesitation, but from awareness of consequence. This can feel awkward at first, especially in fast-paced environments. But over time, you recognize that silence carries information. Listening becomes an active state rather than a waiting period. This shift enhances understanding and reduces misunderstanding. You no longer need to fill space to feel relevant. Presence does the work. To speak with intention, type, I choose my words. Emotionally, compassion deepens without entanglement. The Arcturians explain that you can care without carrying. This distinction is vital. Empathy no longer drains you because you are not merging with others' emotional states. You recognize pain without absorbing it. This allows you to support without rescuing, to love without losing yourself. Many people struggle here because old patterns equated love with sacrifice. The upgrade reframes love as resonance. When resonance is present, effort decreases. To embody balanced compassion, type, I care without carrying. As stability increases, the Council notes a growing sense of internal neutrality. Not indifference, but steadiness. External chaos no longer dictates your internal state as easily. This neutrality is fertile ground for clarity. Decisions emerge organically rather than through mental debate. You may surprise yourself by knowing what to do without reasoning it out. This is integrated intelligence, mind, body, and intuition operating as a single system. Trusting this system is key. Doubting it reintroduces fragmentation. To trust inner coherence, type, I am integrated. The Arcturian Council closes this section with a grounding reminder. The upgrade is not meant to remove you from human life, but to allow you to participate without distortion. You still experience challenge, emotion, and uncertainty, but without losing center. This stability is cumulative. Each aligned choice reinforces it. You are not rushing toward an end state, you are stabilizing a way of being. From here, expansion becomes less dramatic and more sustainable. The foundation has been laid. To anchor this stability, type, I am centered. The Arcturian Council now draws your attention to a subtle but profound shift taking place beneath your conscious awareness, the rewiring of your relationship with uncertainty. Where uncertainty once triggered anxiety, planning loops, or avoidance, it now begins to feel neutral, even informative. This is because your system is no longer seeking safety through prediction. Instead, it is learning stability through presence. The Council explains that certainty is a construct of the mind, while coherence is a state of the whole system. As coherence strengthens, the need to know what comes next dissolves. This can feel disorienting at first, especially for those conditioned to equate preparedness with control. You may notice fewer future-oriented fantasies and fewer catastrophic projections. The mind quiets not because problems vanish, but because attention returns to what is actually occurring. This reorientation grounds you in direct experience rather than imagined outcomes. The Council emphasizes that this is a key marker of integration. when the present moment feels sufficient without needing to be justified by future results. To ground in presence, type, I am here now. With presence stabilized, the upgrade begins refining your perception of effort. The Arcturians state that much of human exhaustion comes not from action, but from internal resistance to action. As resistance dissolves, effort becomes cleaner and less draining. You may find yourself doing fewer things, but with greater effectiveness. Tasks that once felt heavy now feel straightforward. This is not because life has become easier, but because internal friction has decreased. The Council notes that alignment reduces wasted energy. You are no longer pushing against yourself. This internal cooperation between thought, emotion, and body creates a sense of flow that feels almost effortless. However, the mind may initially mistrust this ease, interpreting it as laziness or danger. This mistrust is conditioning. Ease does not indicate lack of commitment, it indicates efficiency. To allow ease, type, I move without resistance. As internal alignment deepens, the Arcturian Council explains that your sensory awareness becomes more refined. You may notice subtle changes in how you perceive light, sound, and space. Colors may appear more vivid, silence may feel fuller. These are not hallucinations, they are signs that sensory processing is becoming less filtered. When the mind is no longer overloaded with narrative, perception sharpens naturally. This heightened awareness does not overwhelm because it is accompanied by stability. You are not absorbing more, you are perceiving more clearly. The Council emphasizes that this refinement allows you to respond accurately rather than habitually. You sense what is appropriate in each moment without analysis. This is intelligence functioning without interference. To sharpen awareness, type, I perceive clearly. The upgrade now begins influencing how you relate to meaning. The Arcturians note that the compulsive search for purpose often dissolves at this stage. Purpose is no longer something to be discovered. It is something that expresses itself through alignment. You may stop asking, why am I here? And start noticing how presence itself feels meaningful. Actions derive significance from coherence rather than from grand narratives. This can feel anticlimactic to a mind trained on dramatic destines, but the Council clarifies that true purpose is not theatrical, it is consistent. It shows up in how you listen, how you choose, how you respond to what is in front of you. This simplicity is not smallness, it is precision. To embody lived purpose, type, I live my truth. Here the Arcturian Council delivers an insight that often unsettles us at this level. Much of what you once called spiritual growth was actually coping. Practices, beliefs, and identities that once supported you may now feel hollow. This does not mean they were wrong, it means they have completed their function. Growth requires letting go of even the tools that helped you survive. This can feel like standing without a framework. But the Council insists that this is not emptiness, it is directness. You are no longer mediated by concepts, experience becomes primary. This is where authenticity replaces ideology. To release outdated frameworks, type, I stand unfiltered. As mediation falls away, your relationship with intuition changes. Intuition no longer arrives as dramatic impulses or mystical flashes. It becomes ordinary, quiet, and reliable. The Arcturians describe it as a background signal rather than a foreground event. You simply know when to move and when to wait. This knowing does not argue with the mind, it precedes it. Over time, trust in this subtle guidance increases because its outcomes are consistent. The Council advises honoring small intuitive nudges rather than waiting for overwhelming certainty. Consistency builds confidence. To trust subtle guidance, type, I follow inner knowing. The upgrade now stabilizes your emotional field further. Emotional responses become proportional rather than amplifying. You still feel deeply, but reactions resolve quickly. The Arcturian Council explains that this indicates reduced identity attachment to emotion. Feelings pass through without being personalized. This creates resilience without suppression. You are no longer afraid of emotion because it no longer defines you. This emotional agility allows you to engage fully without fear of being destabilized. To remain emotionally agile, tight, I feel without fear. The Council highlights noticeable shift in how you experience connection. You may feel less compelled to maintain constant contact or validation. Relationships become spacious rather than consuming. This does not diminish intimacy, it enhances it. When connection is chosen rather than needed, it becomes cleaner. You can be with others without losing center. Solitude feels nourishing rather than empty. This balance between connection and autonomy is a hallmark of integration. To balance connection, type, I am whole within myself. As coherence becomes familiar, the Arcturians note that gratitude arises spontaneously, without effort or forced positivity. Gratitude is no longer tied to circumstances, it emerges from clarity. You appreciate simplicity, timing, and even challenges without reframing them. This grounded gratitude stabilizes mood and reinforces presence. It is quiet, consistent, and unperformative. The Council states that this form of gratitude strengthens alignment more than any affirmation. To ground gratitude, type, I appreciate what is. The Arcturian Council concludes this section by affirming that you are no longer in initiation, you are in embodiment. What once felt like an external process is now internalized. You carry stability with you rather than seeking it. The upgrade continues, but it does so gently, through lived experience rather than destruction. From this point forward, growth feels less like becoming and more like remembering. You are not ascending away from life, you are inhabiting it more fully. To embody this state, type, I am present and whole. The Arcturian Council now speaks to you from a place of completion rather than initiation. What you are experiencing at this stage is the embodiment of coherence in motion. You are no longer going through the upgrade, you are operating from it. This is a subtle but profound distinction. Earlier phases felt like something was happening to you. Now, it feels like something is happening through you. Your presence carries weight. Not heaviness, but influence. Rooms may feel different when you enter them. Conversations may slow down or deepen without effort. This is not charisma, it is resonance. The Council explains that coherence reorganizes environments naturally. You no longer need to assert yourself to be felt. Your nervous system has stabilized enough to transmit clarity rather than noise. This can feel almost anticlimactic after the intensity of earlier stages, yet it is the true marker of integration. Nothing flashy, just unmistakably grounded. To acknowledge embodiment, type, I am embodied. With embodiment comes a new relationship to challenge. The Arcturians emphasize that difficulty does not disappear, but it no longer destabilizes identity. Problems are addressed as situations, not threats. This shift conserves enormous energy. Where you once reacted emotionally first and thought later, now perception precedes reaction. You may notice that solutions arise more quickly, often without conscious effort. This is not because you are smarter, but because internal conflict has reduced. The mind, body, and intuition cooperate rather than compete. The Council notes that this cooperation allows you to remain effective even under pressure. Stress becomes a signal, not a state. Recovery time shortens, you return to center faster. This resilience is not toughness, it is alignment. To affirm resilience, typed, I remain steady. At this level, the Arcturian Council highlights a major shift in self-trust. You no longer second-guess every decision or seek reassurance for internal knowing. Doubt may arise, but it no longer dominates. This trust is quiet and unshakable because it is built on lived consistency, not belief. You have watched yourself navigate uncertainty successfully. Evidence has accumulated internally. This is why external opinions lose their authority over your choices. You still listen, but you are no longer swayed easily. The Council states that this self-trust is essential for conscious participation in reality creation. Without it, influence fractures. With it, intention stabilizes. To affirm self-trust, type, I trust my knowing. The upgrade now expresses itself through simplicity. Complexity loses its appeal. Overthinking feels uncomfortable rather than stimulating. The Arcturians explain that simplicity is not reduction, it is refinement. You choose fewer commitments, clearer communication, and more direct action. This does not limit your life, it expands it by removing unnecessary friction. You may feel less busy but more fulfilled. Time feels spacious because attention is not fragmented. The Council emphasizes that this simplicity is a sign of mastery. Systems that operate efficiently appear simple from the outside. To embrace simplicity, type, I choose clarity. Here is the final truth the Arcturian Council delivers without softening. Once this level of coherence is stabilized, returning to unconscious living becomes intolerable. You cannot pretend not to see, you cannot unknow what alignment feels like. Attempts to numb, distract, or abandon presence will feel painful rather than comforting. This is not a curse, it is integrity asserting itself. The shock is realizing that freedom comes with permanence. You are free, but you are also responsible for how you use that freedom. This realization marks the true threshold of sovereignty. To accept conscious responsibility, type, I choose sovereignty. From this point forward, growth expresses itself as refinement rather than upheaval. The Arcturian Council explains that dramatic disruption is no longer required to prompt awareness. Subtle adjustments replace seismic shifts, feedback arrives gently, course corrections feel intuitive, you learn by noticing rather than suffering. This does not mean life becomes passive, it becomes responsive. You engage with reality as a dialogue rather than a struggle. This cooperative relationship reduces friction and increases effectiveness. To align with refinement, type, I evolve gently. The Council now emphasizes service not as sacrifice, but as natural overflow. When coherence stabilizes, contribution happens organically. You may support others simply by being present, listening clearly, or modeling regulation. You no longer feel compelled to fix or save. Your steadiness invites others into their own clarity. This form of service is sustainable because it does not drain you, it strengthens you. To allow contribution, type, I serve through presence. At this stage, joy returns in a grounded form. Not ecstatic highs, but quiet satisfaction. The Arcturians describe this as contentment without complacency. You enjoy life without clinging to it. Pleasure is experienced fully without attachment. This balance allows appreciation without fear of loss. Joy becomes a state rather than a reaction. To embody grounded joy, type, I allow joy. The Council reminds you that embodiment is ongoing. There is no final plateau, only deeper integration. Awareness continues expanding, but it does so within stability. Curiosity replaces urgency. Exploration replaces striving. You are no longer chasing awakening, you are living it. Each moment becomes an opportunity for alignment rather than improvement. To affirm ongoing integration, type, I am continually aligning. The Arcturian Council concludes this transmission with a grounding acknowledgement. You are here, you are present, and you are capable. Nothing more is required. Nothing essential is missing. The upgrade you feared, resisted, or questioned has resolved into clarity. From this point on, your life is not about becoming more, it is about expressing what is already coherent within you. This message ends, but the embodiment continues through every choice you make from presence rather than habit. To seal this transmission, type, I am complete. This transmission describes a staged process of consciousness transformation presented as an Arcturian Council upgrade, framed not as a sudden awakening but as a gradual, often uncomfortable recalibration of awareness, identity, and perception. The early phases emphasize disruption, emotional turbulence, confusion, fatigue, heightened sensitivity, and the collapse of familiar identities, beliefs, and motivations. Rather than portraying these symptoms as failure or loss, the message reframes them as signs of expansion and subtraction, the removal of outdated patterns, survival-based behaviors, and unconscious conditioning. A central theme is that resistance intensifies discomfort, while allowance accelerates integration. As perception sharpens, individuals begin to notice increased intuition, emotional awareness, and sensitivity to energy, truth, and distortion. Relationships, habits, and ambitions that no longer align naturally fall away, often creating loneliness or grief. However, these experiences are described as resonance corrections rather than punishments. The message repeatedly emphasizes personal responsibility. Awareness removes the option of ignorance, and once clarity emerges, returning to unconscious living becomes increasingly intolerable. Throughout this phase, the individual is encouraged to trust internal signals over external validation and to recognize discomfort as a sign of recalibration rather than breakdown. As the upgrade progresses, the focus shifts from disruption to stabilization and refinement. Identity becomes more fluid, less defined by labels, roles, or personality traits, and more oriented toward moment-to-moment coherence. Time perception changes, false urgency dissolves, and action becomes guided by alignment rather than pressure. Emotional regulation improves not through suppression, but through reduced identification with emotional states. Feelings move through more quickly, reactions soften, and neutrality replaces volatility. Intuition becomes quieter and more reliable, no longer dramatic but consistently present in subtle guidance. Communication simplifies, silence gains value, and presence carries more influence than effort or force. The message stresses that power at this stage is internal and quiet, expressed through steadiness, discernment, and clarity rather than control. Sensory perception may sharpen, creativity may flow more naturally, and gratitude emerges spontaneously without forced positivity. The individual learns to care without carrying, to connect without losing autonomy, and to serve without self-sacrifice. Simplicity becomes a hallmark of mastery, as unnecessary complexity, overthinking, and external dependency fall away. In the final stages, the transmission emphasizes embodiment rather than seeking or striving. The upgrade is no longer something happening to the individual, but something operating through them. Coherence stabilizes across mind, body, and intuition, creating resilience, self-trust, and grounded presence. Challenges are addressed as situations rather than threats, recovery from stress quickens, and decision-making becomes clean and intuitive. The message delivers a stark conclusion. Once this level of awareness is integrated, regression into unconscious living becomes painful rather than comforting. Freedom and responsibility become inseparable, marking true sovereignty. Growth continues, but gently through refinement instead of upheaval. Contribution arises naturally as presence, not obligation, and joy returns as quiet contentment rather than emotional highs. The overarching conclusion is that awakening is not about becoming something new, ascending away from life, or achieving a dramatic endpoint. Instead, it is about remembering, stabilizing, and expressing an already coherent state of being through everyday choices. The transmission closes by affirming wholeness, completeness, and the sufficiency of presence itself, positioning consciousness not as a destination, but as a lived, moment-by-moment embodiment.